I'm a mother to two boys, ages 10 and 12. I've been a middle school special education teacher for 21 years, and I've seen the effects of Common Core and the New York State assessments both as a teacher and as a parent. And I know we've heard a little bit about experiences here and about what people feel about APPR and Common Core, and I'm just going to relate my personal experiences in both of those capacities. During third grade, my younger son was experiencing stress and anxiety towards school. He is a bright social child. He typically excels at school, but for 2 months during third grade, he was crying every morning, throwing temper tantrums about his homework. When it came time for those assessment tests, he was so anxious. He was crying the night before the test sessions, wouldn't eat breakfast that morning. I also had to administer those tests to my 7th graders at school, and I had to watch helplessly while they struggled with the tests. My students that I read tests to all year long, because they have significant decoding deficits, have to read the tests themselves during the ELA. They're reading about a 4th grade level, some of them, and they simply cannot read the test. So they're asking me, can you read me this word? Can you tell me what that says? And I have to tell them, no, I can't tell you. At the end, they tell me, I probably failed that, I couldn't do it, I had to guess. Very frustrating for them, very upsetting for them during these tests, and I had to reassure them that it doesn't reveal the progress they've made that year, it doesn't reveal the effort that they demonstrated all year, and the academic successes they did have for those tests. The following year, during the weeks and days of test prepping leading up to the assessments, I resolved not to allow my own children to sit through the hours and hours of unnecessary testing again. I knew their strengths and weaknesses. I had confidence that their teachers knew their strengths and weaknesses, and I told them I wouldn't be allowing them to take the state tests. And my older son, who was in 6th grade, told me, I feel like a huge weight has been lifted off my shoulders. And there was no testing anxiety in my house that year. We have baseline assessments, which you've been hearing about. The baseline assessments serve little functional purpose for me. NYSED says the baseline should be used as a diagnostic tool to drive our instruction. They believe the SLOs, which are called student learning objectives, those are our baselines, they should help us understand where students' strengths and weaknesses lie early in the year. These are usually given the first week or 2 of school, these baseline assessments. But the problem is, these baselines were only created to satisfy the state requirement for APPR. They're written by the districts, and students typically perform poorly on the fall baseline, and then they score well on the spring baseline. When that happens, teachers rate well for that portion of their score. In middle school, students have to take up to 8 different baseline assessments during the first week or 2 of school on content they haven't yet been taught. So essentially, the students try. They don't know us as their teachers very well. We're asking them to take these tests. They struggle through, but they know essentially that they've failed each one. The foreign language baselines are given in the foreign language to students who have no experience with that foreign language yet. To me, this is a really terrible way to set the tone for the beginning of a new school year. Students approach these baselines very differently. Some diligently try to figure out the questions. Some don't. Some just guess. I had to read the baseline tests to my special education students. They were bubbling in answers before I even got done reading the question. And they told me that they couldn't understand the words I was saying to them. The vocabulary was way over their head. Some students, like my son, who's a 7th grader now, did not take any of the baselines, as their parents refused to allow it. I was one of those parents, and my son read an entire novel during the administration of the baselines this year. Many of my colleagues, like myself, we've designed our own authentic assessments and true diagnostic tools to determine our students' prior knowledge and to plan our instruction. The overall results of the ELA math assessment tests are used by districts to guide instruction district-wide, but there's very little diagnostic value for the individual student because the assessments are used primarily to rate teachers in schools. The assessment scores, as we've heard, come 6 months later as I'm teaching to an entirely new group of students. Teachers do not receive a breakdown of individual scores for individual students. So the students I had last year, they have very different abilities and needs than the group I teach this year. I, as many of my colleagues do, have adjusted my teaching and my instruction to meet the needs of my current students. And I'll continue to do this as the year progresses. But there is an expectation that I will use the information gleaned from our school's students' scores last year to ensure that my current students perform better on the state assessments. But the assessment tests also change from year to year. I believe that high-stakes testing and the implementation of the Common Core initiative, they have corrupted our schools. It is impossible for teachers to ignore the fact that student scores directly affect our ratings. These scripted modules, they replace innovative creative lessons that can be designed and differentiated with specific students and classes in mind. The modules are still being created and posted as we speak. So teachers sometimes have very little advanced preparation before they have to actually use them and teach them in the classroom. In elementary classrooms, test prep takes up significant portions of the day, especially in the spring. Students are called out to do test prep before school, after school, during lunch periods, in the weeks leading up to the assessments. Last year, at the end of my older son's 6th grade graduation ceremony, he turned to me and he said, "Let's just get out of here." And it really saddened me that he didn't look back on his elementary school years in a positive way. And I know that the Common Core curriculum and testing wasn't entirely to blame for that. But I know firsthand, as a parent and a teacher, that the current educational climate has negatively affected the morale of teachers, and this trickles down to students. We have been tricked into believing most of our students are not graduating college and career ready. This may be true in some schools, but it is not true for many districts in New York State and on Long Island. There is no evidence to prove these new standards are effective, and I, as someone else had said, I resent the fact that an entire generation of students is being subjected to them. Bill Gates, whose foundation is the leading contributor to the educational reforms, he stated in a televised interview at Harvard University that it would be great if our education stuff worked, but that we probably won't know for about a decade. My younger son will be 20 in a decade. What if these reforms don't work? My sons are not data points, they are not test subjects, they are my children. The art of teaching cannot be summed up by a single score. The process of learning cannot be summed up by a single score. Our schools have consistently done their jobs well, and control must be given back to them. Change has to happen. Until it does, I refuse to allow my children to participate in any standardized tests that are not truly used for diagnostic purposes. I will not allow them to participate in tests that are used primarily for school and teacher evaluations. They are harmful and unnecessary for my children when used for this purpose. The teachers, the parents, and mostly the students in New York, they need your help. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. I have a couple of comments, and I know you personally, but
Yes.
one of the things in your testimony towards the end, which I'm going to cover first, you said, my sons are not data points, they are my children. All of your students are your children, really, right?
Absolutely.
And you try to raise them accordingly.
Absolutely.
Another one, it's affected the morale of teachers, and it trickles down to the students, and that's true, because as you said a moment ago, that you could not help that student who said, define this word. You couldn't do it. You were prohibited from doing it. Isn't that the truth?
Exactly.
I asked Regent Tillis if there's a script, and I said, where they cannot vary from, and he sort of said, well, I don't think that's true.
Right.
But from my other conversations with you, you've said that you cannot, it's like an actor on stage. You've got a script, you've got to stick to it. Is that correct?
Yes, and what I was referring to there was on the ELA assessments, there's a specific set of guidelines for the modifications that we can give for students, and they are different from the modifications that are on those students' IEPs. So a student may have entire test read on their IEP, and their tests are read to them all year long because their decoding is so weak that we cannot assess their comprehension by having them read the test themselves because they can't read the words, so we read them the test. But then when it comes to the ELA assessment, we are not allowed to read them the test because it is assumed that, well, they want to use the student's score as a way to evaluate their reading, but they don't separate comprehension and decoding. It's all lumped together. So we have no idea when that student's score comes back whether they couldn't read the words or they couldn't comprehend the material. But we are not allowed to read significant portions of the ELA to the students. But as far as the modules goes, what you were referring to before, it is scripted. And the problem is, I think New York State is saying that they don't have to be as scripted as that, and the teachers have flexibility. But the teachers are following directives from the administration and the central district. So when that comes down, the teachers are not operating autonomously. They are operating under what their superintendent tells them to do.
In considering their evaluations by doing so.
Yes, and the
Very much
scripted
so.
module is designed to help get better scores on the
Right,
assessment
right,
test.
right. How many special needs students do you have?
Well, currently in my classes, I have about 15 this year. It varies from year to year.
Okay. And that was an effect on them too, right?
Absolutely.
Very much so. Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Carolyn.
You're welcome.
Hi, Karen. I keep hearing a recurring theme that's very, that I think we have to nail home. And I've talked to a lot of teachers. You know, I've heard a lot of teachers come up and testify. Marla also. And what I keep hearing is a lot of the people that are opting out of these tests are teachers for their children. So we actually have the educators going, I'm not subjecting my children to this.
Yes.
Am I right on this? Is everybody? So that's like, sort of like a mechanic building a car and say, I will never drive in this thing, you know? So, I think that those hearing this, those reporting back to whoever they want to report back to after watching this, and the parents out there that are watching this live streamed, and what I could tell you from the last time that we did this, there were approximately 50 people that watched the whole live stream on the last, and they shared it after it went on YouTube throughout the entire state. So I just want to thank everybody who's participating here today, because this is going to go far beyond the four walls of this room. But I think we have to nail that and send it home that the people that are opting out are the educators. So if the educators are saying, my kid's not participating in this, I think people better start paying attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carolyn. Andrea? And after Andrea Bergen is David Feller.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having this. I really appreciate it. I'm sure everybody does. I'm coming to you actually as a parent, not as an educator or an administrator, just simply a parent. I have 3 boys. One is in 4th grade, one is in 1st, and one is in kindergarten. And I'm in the Carl Place School District. Love my town, love my district, love my teachers. I think they're phenomenal. The thing about Common Core is that it is, and again, I'm going to try not to repeat what's already been said a lot, but that's kind of difficult because I think a lot of us have some common issues with what's going on. But I will also try and veer away from that as well. But one of my major issues is it is a one-size-fits-all. It's essentially that every child in, let's just use 1st grade, every child, every 6-year-old in that grade needs to be learning the same exact thing at the same exact rate, at the same exact time in their classroom, as well as grade level, and eventually the state, and eventually America, I guess, anywhere you go, it's going to be exactly the same. That is impossible. I have 3 children that basically have the same DNA, and all 3 of them do not learn the same way. I'm not saying they're not all capable of learning the same thing, because they are, but the way in which they're going to learn it varies drastically, just within my household. Now, my 4th grader actually took the assessments last year, and again, like someone else said, he had no problem with them. He was okay. He was all right. He was fine, you know. And the school that he's in, which is a 3rd through 6th grade, is actually implementing the curriculum and the modules and the shifts a little slower. They're baby-stepping it to an extent. They're bumping it up each year. However, in Cherry Lane, which is the kindergarten through 2nd grade school, they have substantially increased Common Core this year. It was only several weeks before school started that many of the teachers were given just modules, scripts, shifts, and essentially told, this is what you need to teach, because the 3rd graders did so poorly on the test. So what they're trying to do is get all the kindergartners and the 1st graders and 2nd graders to know this by rote so that by 3rd grade they ace that test. Now, I was at a presentation about the Common Core last year. I was during a PTA meeting. The Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum gave a presentation on the Common Core, and again, about the standards. Not so much about the modules or curriculum, the standards. And honestly, I'm a huge supporter of academic excellence. I think it's wonderful to bring up the standards, to expect a little more from our children academically. I thought it sounded wonderful. It really did. I was excited about it. I was happy about it. I thought, it could be a little challenging, but it's essentially going to be a good thing. But when I went to my son's back-to-school night, September 19th, this year in my 6th graders class, and I've spoken to many parents and many teachers that attended different rooms at back to school night, and they all experienced a similar feeling in those classrooms, which was the teachers were crushed. The teachers, some of them were fighting back tears, trying to go into what was going on, what was to be expected. Sitting in my son's class, which started off very happy and optimistic and really excited to hear about the year, about 5 minutes into it, my stomach just started to sink, and I was literally fighting back tears listening to what was going on and hearing about modules and scripts and we have to do this. There's an hour and a half devoted to this, and there's an hour devoted to this, and make sure that your children are here on time, because we used to have time where the child could come in and hang up their coats and acclimate to the classroom a bit. There's no time for that. They need to be working at 9 a.m. When you send in snack for your child, because kindergarten and 1st grade still have snack, make sure it's nothing that needs to be mixed or opened or stirred or anything that's going to take more than 10 minutes, because if it takes more than 10 minutes, it will be thrown away. We used to have a royal reader program where parents would come in and share books and read with the children. There's no more time for that. There's a, not really a timeout chair, but it was called, it was sweet, a reflection chair at the back of the room for if a child, you know, needed a little bit of a timeout. And usually 5 minutes would be taken out of playtime and the child would sit back there. But there's no more playtime. This is a room with 6-year-olds. You know, the 7th day of first grade, my son was crying. And we literally had to chase him up the street to get him on the bus because he was screaming that he hates school. The 7th day of first grade. His teacher is fantastic. I've met with her several times. We're doing the best we can, but I'm seeing the work that's coming home. I'm seeing the things that he's doing in the classroom, and to be quite honest, it's incredibly boring, monotonous, colorless. There's no imagination. There's no creative thinking. There's just essentially memorizing and reading. One of the things that came home this week, which was wonderful, is they're doing different lands, similar stories, which they give just papers of Cinderella. It's a story of Cinderella, 5 pages, front and back, that I'm supposed to read with my 6-year-old. Now, I don't know about you, but if you have a 5 or 6-year-old, if you're reading a story of just words and text, after about, I don't know, paragraph 3, they're thinking of SpongeBob and they're gone. They're not going to sit through 5 pages of text. And then, but that's just the first one. Then we have to read the one from Egypt, which is the girl with the red slippers. And then there's another one from Ireland. And we have to read all of these to our children and then ask our 6-year-olds, what are the similarities here to these stories? What do you see? What do you get? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. They get bored. That's what they get. My child is, all of my children are very, very smart. But my 6-year-old is a little hyper. He's a little, you know, a little outspoken, a little loud, a little fidgety, and he's not necessarily going to get these things that the kid next to him might get, not in the same way. And he's struggling, and I'm seeing it every day, and it's getting worse and worse. He's maintaining in school, but when he gets home, and before he gets on that bus, he just melts down. He has no sense of control, no sense of choice, no sense of play. He tells me how he sees the bricks, the little blocks in his classroom, but he's not allowed to play with them. Today he had computer, so I said, I know he had music and computer today, and I said, oh, you have computer? And he said, yeah, but all we do is tests. That's all he does. He's 6. Not only is this how it's being implemented, again, I think the standards are fantastic, but also, yes, how my children are essentially, for the first 3 years of their early education, going to study for a test that is not going to do anything diagnostically for them except for them to have their data shipped away somewhere and judge their teacher. 3 years of their academic life is dedicated to that, and that's a huge problem. And I've heard some people say that the shifts and the modules, they're not mandated by the state. They're not, just the standards are. However, our teachers have been given these and told this is what you need to do. And even if there is funding, which my assistant superintendent for curriculum said there is funding for teachers to buy extra materials to try and customize the plan so that they can work around it. But they were given a mountain of material in a very short amount of time. So even if they have the money available, they don't have the time to customize this. My son doesn't have time to eat a snack. How is a teacher going to build a curriculum? It's impossible. And you know, I really think we do. I know what you're saying, that people have said. Common Core, unfortunately, is probably not going anywhere anytime soon. The standards might not be going anywhere. But we need to pull the testing, and we need to pull back. These teachers need training. They need to look at this material, they need to look at this curriculum, and they need to build it so that they can teach to our children. That's one of the most amazing things about the teachers in my school district, is that they look at the individual child and they see the needs. I've had teachers email me on weekends, call me before my kid comes to school on Sunday to see how he was doing, check up on me, write notes to me, always in constant contact with me, going above and beyond. But you're taking their power away, and if it continues the way it is, we won't even need teachers. We'll just need someone that's basically kind of literate that can just hand out schedules and shifts and modules. You don't even need a teacher. Maybe a robot can do it because it's just pointless. It's unfair. It's unfair to my kids. It's unfair to our teachers. This is hurting them. It's hurting us, and it needs to stop. And I don't know, I just, how long is it going to go on? How long is it going to stay like this? How long are my children going to be guinea pigs until we realize, oh, whoops, well, this isn't really working really well? I mean, they're saying that this is to make children college and career ready. My 1-year-old doesn't want to go to, my first grader doesn't want to go to school. You think he's going to be ready for college? By the time he's in 3rd grade, he's going to want to stay home and get a job. He's not going to want to go. And my kindergartner isn't that far behind him. We're doing computer tests, coming home, and some of the homework is a little ridiculous as well. I mean, he's not even writing letters anymore. He's making swirls and slashes, pre-writing skills. You know, he can write a B. Why don't we do that? Why don't we write a B? I'm just a mother who's very taken aback by what's happening now, and I think we really are heading down a dangerous road in education and honestly in this country. And there's something vaguely Orwellian about, you know, everybody learned the same thing, the same pace, the same way. I mean, it doesn't seem to me that we're raising college and career-ready children. It seems to me that we're raising people who are ready to work in a factory and put their head down and not ask questions. And I'm sorry, my children aren't going to fit in that box. So, thank you.
A minute ago, you said, what's it going to take? What it will take is a revolution, and that's begun. It has begun.
Amen.
Right here in this room and other places. And it's got to continue because that's the only way. The teachers, the parents know better. And I said this at the last meeting. There's a high plate that somebody gave me from a teachers group gave me, and it said on there, those that can teach, those that can't make laws about teaching. And that's the view, and that's the problem. Keep it up.
If I can make one comment, the last thing you just said is you're just a mother, okay?
Oh.
And I've had people come up to me and talk to me about leading the charge of trying to get rid of Common Core, and I keep saying the same thing. It's not me. All I am is a vessel. The mothers of this state, take a look at the internet. It's the mothers that are going to make a difference here. It's the mothers that are standing up. I'm meeting mothers all over the state that are actually putting their money up, their own personal money, to do forums.
I just had a forum Monday with Assemblyman Raw came and Senator Jack Martin.
From Westchester to Buffalo. Let me tell you, I talked to one of my colleagues from Buffalo the other day. They had a forum on Common Core, a race to the top. 2,000 people showed up. 2,000, okay? This is all over the state. It's not just here. We started the forums here, okay? We put in this legislation, I put in the legislation to start a conversation. Let me tell you, it started a conversation. It's all throughout the state. So when you just say that you're just a mother, okay, it's you guys that are doing this, okay? We're sitting here listening. You're the ones going to make a difference, and a lot of people aren't going to like this. Next year's election time, okay? All right? And the bottom line is what I would ask everybody to do. Go out, educate your friends, educate your neighbors, talk to everybody you can. Make them aware, wake them up, show them what's going on here.
I'm doing my best.
And when people wake up to this, the more that they see it, the more they don't like it. So, look.
That is true.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Andrea, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Like Andrea said, I participated in a forum that Andrea organized in the Carl Place District the other night, and I know through that some eyes were opened in the room as to what's going on, and, you know, Andrea's doing a great job of spreading that message and getting the other moms involved, so thank you, and thank you for coming today.
Thank you so much.
David Feller, and after David will be Jeanette Duderman.
Hi, Good evening. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and thank you for your patience.
Sure. And I'm David Feller. I'm the superintendent in the North Merrick School District, and I've had the pleasure of working in that community for 13 years. And I'm also this year very honored to be the president of the Nassau County Council of School Superintendents. And I want to thank the committee for this opportunity. Clearly, you've heard many concerns from educators, parents, and community members, and I applaud your efforts. I just want to say as an aside that I've known Dave McDonough for a long time, and he's always done the right thing by our community, so I'm sure he'll continue to do so. Anyway, in many ways, we are being asked to comment on what is wrong and to propose solutions to a problem while the plane is in mid-flight. This is not how any thoughtful enterprise should do business. The time to have held these conversations with the State Education Department and to do this type of outreach should have been before the implementation. In other words, keep the airplane in the hangar and make sure it's ready to fly before you take off. This is especially important when all of the passengers are our most precious cargo, our children. With that said, in the real worlds of education, business, and for that matter, any undertaking, a great deal of thought and planning has to be given before any major change is rolled out. First and foremost, you have to be convinced that the new direction you are taking is right. This happens only after meaningful research is conducted. Part of the process entails getting feedback from all stakeholders. In addition, once you are convinced that your new plan, a new idea is worth pursuing, the part that will make or break implementation acceptance has to do with the process issues. How do you plan to roll this out? What's your implementation timeline? How will you educate your community about the change? How will you thoughtfully prepare your staff to ensure for a meaningful transition? It's a given that most districts take this measured approach whenever launching any new initiative. Whenever we are about to adopt even a textbook or a new curriculum, we spend a considerable amount of time making certain that the final product is clearly in line with our mission. Logistically, we often utilize the summer months to bring staff together to thoughtfully plan out any new curriculum prior to the start of a new school year. The rollout of the state's Common Core and the new assessments was done in a hurried fashion and based upon a set of false assumptions. We were led to believe that education in the state of New York was in a crisis mode that needed to be fixed immediately. We were told that New York ranked 38th in the country. We were told that we needed to make certain that our children were college and career ready. The truth of the matter is that many districts throughout the state, especially those here on Long Island, have been successfully preparing students for college, career, and life in general for many years. The goal that has been established is nothing new for us. Our communities deservedly expect school administrators and teachers to provide our children with the tools to lead successful schools. They also expect us to do this in a manner that is thoughtful, respectful of individual differences, and mindful that one size doesn't fit all. Why is it that many parents who live in countries which supposedly rank ahead of the United States in educational results choose to move to Long Island so their children can experience an American education? Just look in each of our schools for proof of that. Long Island schools were pioneers in requiring all students to take higher level courses and in the process remove gates or artificial barriers. Without prompting from the State Education Department and other governmental officials, our students took and successfully completed Regents courses in significant numbers, pursued AP classes, and in some schools like Rockville Center, take IB English as a matter of course. The more we have to rigidly follow state mandates and prescriptions, the less creative we will be in providing our children with unique opportunities that are truly meaningful and engaging. This has been the hallmark of a local education in New York State. Perhaps the immediate focus needed to be on helping those districts and communities which have demonstrated over time that they have not been successful. After all, every child deserves a high-quality education that will prepare him or her to meet all of the challenges of life, higher education being one of them. The state's priority should be to assist those school districts which have historically underperformed. If the state can adequately address this issue only, it will go a long way towards raising the overall achievement of the state. I've been an educator for 37 years, and saying that I run the risk of making myself older, much older than I really am. 13 as a superintendent, 29 years as an administrator, and 8 as a special education teacher. I also am the parent of 2 children with special needs, one who's in college and one who graduated from college. I have witnessed many changes and new requirements that have come along. Many have been successful and many have been beneficial. For example, the Dignity for All Students Act was thoughtfully researched, and the requirements gave districts sufficient lead time to implement in a manner that was coherent and workable. Also, as a special educator, I know that many children with special needs have proven that they can accomplish much more than we might have thought possible. With the appropriate support, most were able to pass Regents exams and meet more rigorous high school requirements. However, what I have witnessed during the past 2 years has greatly alarmed me. As a superintendent, I know that I'm required to uphold all the laws, rules, and requirements that have been established by the state of New York, and I wish to assure you that I'm very vigilant when it comes to performing this role. I'll try to be vigilant in keeping to 5 minutes. However, I have never seen the level of stress that I have witnessed over the last year. This stress can be seen in principals, teachers, parents, and most alarmingly, our children. This greatly troubles me because much of the stress could have been avoided. With little or no lead time, with resources that were incomplete or unavailable, districts were required to fully roll out and implement the Common Core. To make matters worse, our children were expected to sit for Common Core-based examinations that they were not fully prepared to take. Keep in mind that these very same children did not have the benefit of Common Core instruction in prior years. While we were told to expect the results would be lower, only as we got closer to the test were we informed that we should expect drops in scores by as much as 30 to 40%. Needless to say, this created a great deal of additional anxiety for children, staff, and parents. If I could draw an analogy, we were told that the best way to enable our children to learn to swim was to throw them all in the pool at the same time. It seems that the state believed that this cold turkey approach was the quickest way to getting all districts on board. Shock them, and this would get everyone's attention, and this would help us speed up the transition. Unfortunately, when you use an approach like this, the message gets lost and you experience casualties. In our case, our social workers reported higher levels of children who were stressed. On top of that, the exam was not meaningfully, thoughtfully crafted, as even our most advanced students found it difficult, or should I say impossible, to complete some of the sections. To make matters even worse, the test was longer by adding field test questions which were often of a higher level of difficulty. I believe the Assembly should take a look at the rolling out of any assessment prior to teachers being totally ready to address the curriculum and students not ready for the assessment that were given. How, in good conscience, do you give exam to students when they are not well prepared, knowing in advance that they're not going to do well? In my mind, this was and is unconscionable. The impact on classified and ELL students was even more pronounced. If you give a test that 70% of the students fail, as a teacher, your first question has to be, what was wrong with the test? Compounding the problem has been a growing number of parents who felt their only alternative was to opt out their children from the test. The existence of this movement alone should be a clear signal that this initiative was not thoughtfully rolled out. In addition to the new Common Core curriculum and state assessments, we also had to begin teacher evaluation system and APPR, implementing the Dignity for All Students Act, which at least was thoughtfully put forward. But I would ask that the legislator keep in mind that what is practicable when introducing a new piece of legislation. Dealing with too many new initiatives at the same time can be overwhelming to everyone and a drain on our resources. I fully appreciate that this committee is seeking input in an effort to be responsive to the public as well as to make a difference. As elected officials, you've made this your life work and you should be applauded for this commitment. However, I would implore you that in the future, please get meaningful input from the troops on the ground who will be most impacted before any new legislation takes place. Let's take APPR, for example. The teacher evaluation statistics that are being released right now are certainly causing a stir. In many ways, this data is completely meaningless because by law, each district negotiated its own plan with its own teacher bargaining unit. That means in 700 different districts throughout the state, you have 7 different plans. So to compare one teacher's evaluation to another one in another district is like comparing apples to oranges. Beyond that, the notion that a teacher or a principal's evaluation is a number from 0 to 100 is unprofessional and, quite frankly, demeaning. The amount of time that was devoted to negotiating these evaluation plans was also inordinate. I have a few suggestions that I just would like to make so it doesn't just seem like we're complaining, because I do believe that while we need to learn from the past, we need to move forward as well. I would declare a moratorium on any new legislation which impacts education. I would only adopt additional legislation after getting thoughtful input from all stakeholders, especially those responsible for implementation. In terms of the Common Core, I believe that the goal and principles behind this initiative are worthwhile. We do want to make certain that our children develop higher-level thinking skills and are ready to thrive in an ever-changing world. However, New York State should be a leader, not a follower. We should not automatically accept and adopt every aspect of the Common Core learning standards just because 44 other states have. We should look carefully, thank you. We should look carefully at developmental issues, especially at the earlier grades, to be certain that our children are ready to handle all the demands that are being asked of them from a maturational standpoint. Future assessments must be designed to truly measure what students have learned. These assessments should be administered so that children have ample opportunities to complete them. We should consider untimed tests, especially at the elementary level. Given the high-stakes nature of these tests, eliminate the field questions as they just add stress to everyone. I recognize that these are federal requirements, but if it were in my power, I would ask for a one-year moratorium on the grades 3 through 8 testing. And I'm not running for re-election. SED needs to review the APPR structure and the inordinate amount of lost instructional time due to additional testing. Students who take the algebra regions in grade 8 should not be required to also take the grade 8 math assessment. That's absolutely absurd. Results of future state assessments need to be available to the district by the end of the current school year. This will enable the districts to carefully analyze the data and develop appropriate intervention and curriculum strategies during the summer prior to the beginning of any new school year. And finally, provide focused assistance to those districts which have consistently underperformed. Raising the bar for all students will not magically close the achievement gap that exists between various groups. In fact, without this added focus, the gap will get wider, which may lead to unintended consequences such as increasing dropout rates. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I wish you luck in your task. There's nothing more important than the education of our children. And I think I have gone over my 5 minutes, so I'll end. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Feller. I just have one question. As I had spoken before, I think there are different components to this whole issue, depending on whether it be the educational aspect, the monetary aspect, or even just tying the testing to the teacher evaluations. With regards to that last aspect of tying it from teacher evaluation to the testing scores, do you have any type of alternative to the APPR system that you think would be appropriate as a substitute to what there's currently existing?
Well, I really think that that whatever research is out there that links quality teacher evaluation to student assessment data is marginal at best. I don't know how thought through that this process was, and I would imagine that will be tested the first time that a teacher is brought up for dismissal on the basis of 2 consecutive years of ineffective evaluations. So I don't know if the research is really there. You know, we've had 2 years where we're just looking at the state growth data. With some teachers, I've seen consistency from year to year. With other teachers, I've seen big pendulum changes, and I know that they didn't get any worse as teachers, so I haven't been able to really make sense of that portion. I do think that the adoption of the rubrics, on the other hand, has really been a good thing for districts, especially those that didn't have rubrics. These are the professional component that counts for 60%, and I've seen some very healthy conversation between principal and teachers. What made it difficult, though, is that came about at the same time that the teachers also knew about the other 20 or 40% that counted as state assessment, and it sometimes detracts from the conversation. But I think good schools and good districts have always been mindful of how teachers do with their youngsters and how well teachers and how well students perform, and have always factored that into some way. The science behind what the state is doing, though, I quite frankly don't understand. I've tried to make sense of it, but I don't think I have enough data to be able to make sense of it.
Let me ask you, I heard a very interesting and very thoughtful solution to that, and I just wanted to get your opinion. What about if the state actually did away with APPR but set up a recertification process for teachers, say for an every 5-year basis, and then take the aggregate scores of their standardized testing for their students over a 2 or 5-year period?
Well, I don't have a magical number. At the risk of being unpopular, I don't necessarily believe in lifetime tenure as well. I think there should be some point in a person's career, perhaps by portfolio, where they can demonstrate proficiency or competence. I think this is done in other professions as well. I don't know if 5 years is the right time, but I do think that the whole issue of teacher assessment, teacher requirement in terms of maintaining your licensure, perhaps that's the way to go in terms of demonstrating a completion of a certain number of credits and courses along with the portfolio approach. But I wouldn't want to just, in a knee-jerk reaction, respond to that. So I couldn't completely answer that.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you.
David, I just have a question. You recently became the president of the Nassau County Council of School Superintendents.
Yes.
How many school superintendents are there in Nassau County?
56?
56. Those are all the public schools?
That's correct.
None of the private schools?
That's correct.
Are all of your colleagues in agreement with what you're saying, basically?
First of all, I want to make sure that I emphasize that I'm speaking for myself. But I will tell you that if you want to see a frustrated group of people, once a month come to one of our meetings. Many of the same issues that you hear parents talking about today, teachers talking about, usually takes up a good part of our agenda. Beyond that part of our agenda, we're also dealing with issues of school safety, school security, any number of issues. But the public, and you should know that school superintendents are very concerned about the well-being of children. We take that part of our job extremely seriously, and we really see ourselves as the advocate of last resort within our districts. And we are very concerned about implementation, about confusing dictates. You know, the issues that you've already heard today, I think, are very well eloquently stated. The whole issue with the modules. The modules are very comprehensive. They're very scripted. If you're going to do them, you pretty much have to sacrifice anything else that you were going to do. And if you want to do them in a way that's meaningful, without following them by script, you're going to have to really spend a lot of time looking on what's important in there and being able to integrate that with your current resources. We really haven't had enough time to be able to do that. In my district, we have not mandated that our teachers use the modules. We didn't want to get rid of what we feel is an outstanding educational program, and I'm willing to risk the fact that our test results might not be as good. I just think that we need more time. In addition, we also made a conscious decision. We don't do SLOs in my district. There is an option within the guidelines that you could go with group goals, which ironically were based on the state assessment. This is why in my district, just about all of my teachers ended up in the satisfactory range, or the effective range, I'm sorry. And we had very few in the highly effective range, mainly because we made a conscious decision that we didn't feel it was in the best interest of our children to give tests that were meaningful, just to set baselines to satisfy APPR. And that meant that some of our teachers, might have done better on that portion of the score. And I'm very proud that we made that decision. But I applaud the fact that you're looking at this. I do have one comment of what I heard. I would caution the legislature from feeling a need to take over the state education department. I don't think the state education department should be run in that manner. I think there definitely needs to be accountability, but we all know that shifts of political opinion can change quite frequently, and I think the last thing that we need in our schools is for our curriculums to change on a yearly basis or a semi-yearly basis. But With that, I do think there needs to be a greater level of accountability, and I think that needs to also start with a commissioner who's not afraid of speaking in public, even if the public may not be too accommodating.
Well,
So,
he's not afraid anymore, but I think there was about a week or two ago he was, but.
I
but
don't remember.
56
I don't remember the last time I decided not to go to a board meeting because I thought there might be an angry parent in the audience.
Right. 56 school superintendents, right? And would you properly say that you think you're all on the same page?
I think I am speaking for all the superintendents in terms of their own sense of frustration with dealing with a great deal of change in a very short amount of time that was not thoughtfully planned or thoughtfully delivered. And I think all of them would say that the manner in which the assessments were shoved down our throats last year was unconscionable. So,
And Nassau being one of the highest performing counties in the state, you guys know
Absolutely.
how to do it better, and somebody's shoving it down your throat, right?
well, I think it's, you know, again, it's all about, a lot of it is about process. And we really needed a little bit more time to sink our teeth into the new curriculum, and then to have an assessment that was based upon the fact that children had enough time to have learned it. So,
Okay. Thank you very much, David.
you're welcome.
Thank you, Jeanette. And just so we know who's on deck, Marianne Adrian is on deck.
Hi. Thank you for allowing me to speak and for holding this forum. I kind of want to touch upon something that was just mentioned about Commissioner King and the forums that he had held, and although he has rescheduled some because he's being forced to, basically, I just wanted to kind of talk about what came out of that meeting, and how he has said that the people going against these reforms and the people speaking out are special interests, and that's kind of what I want to focus on. Because I think it's something very important, because the people that don't really know about who is leading this movement, people from the outside, people that don't have children, or people that are not educators, that just hear things in the media, and they're continually hearing him saying, oh, well, these aren't real people that are fighting this. These aren't real parents. That who is behind this movement to end this is special interest groups. And I take personal offense to that, being one of the movement leaders in starting this. My name is Jeanette Duderman. I'm the parent of a 5th grader and a 2nd grader in the North Belmore School District. And as you all know, Commissioner King, the New York State PTA president, joined forces to hold several town hall meetings throughout New York State. The intention was presumably to allow parents to discuss concerns with Common Core and its implementation. After King spoke for 1 hour and 40 minutes, he finally allowed for 20 minutes of comments by parents in the audience. Instead of simply listening to parents, he had a rebuttal for every comment, which took up even more of the time that the last 20 minutes that they were allowed to speak. Instead of simply listening to parents, he had a rebuttal. The parents in the crowd understandably expressed their anger, and Commissioner King stated that as a result of the clear intention of these special interest groups to continue to manipulate the forum, the PTA-sponsored events scheduled have been suspended. Since Commissioner King had implied that any parent who speaks against his policies is a special interest group and must have been manipulated and coerced by educators and NYSET, I feel that the need to explain to you how this journey for me began and what has motivated me and others just like me to take a stand and lead this movement against what we feel is the dismantling of our public education system. Years ago, I had worked at Camp Anchor in Lido Beach for 11 years as a volunteer and then a counselor for children and adults with disabilities and special needs. They are my special interests. I worked at a residential treatment facility upstate New York with children unable to function in a private home or school setting due to their disabilities. They are my special interests. I worked with students at an alternative high school in Port Washington that needed individualized attention and instruction. They are my special interests. My father is a retired public school physics teacher. My younger sister is a school psychologist, and my older sister is a special education teacher. They are my special interests. I receive countless messages from parents and educators about the effects of these policies on their children. The bright third grader who did not finish her ELA in time and was seen rocking back and forth, stating, I didn't finish, over and over. She is my special interest. The kindergartner who burst into tears when seeing the testing timer on his teacher's desk, signaling yet another local exam. He is my special interest. The fourth grader who once believed in his abilities and who now views himself as stupid. He is my special interest. The seventh grader, already nervous about starting middle school, who during the first week of school is administered and fails by design up to 8 local assessments. She is my special interest. 6 months ago, I began the journey to discover why my sons and so many other children I knew had lost their love of learning. I was not approached by educators asking for a parent leader. I was not directed or educated on these issues by the teachers' union. I spoke to my friends. I spoke to my children. I read countless social media posts, articles, and research papers. My research led me to the newly implemented and experimental Common Core curriculum, the excessive use of high-stakes standardized tests, and the new teacher evaluation system. I started a Facebook page called Long Island Opt-out Info to share what I had learned with other parents and give them the tools that they need to advocate for their own children. We currently have over 11,800 members and growing at a rate close to 100 new members a day. Members of my group include parents, grandparents, parent teachers, educators, and students. We are all there for the same reason, to help our children and play our part to fix a broken system. I am also the co-founder of the New York State Allies for Public Education. We are essentially the umbrella for the other 40-plus organizations across New York working diligently to end these harmful policies. Our founders of this group include parents from all across New York State who have been at the forefront of this movement. I am not an educator. I am not a member of NYSET. I am not paid for the countless hours I spend each and every day working to educate other parents. I am not paid for the weekly meetings, forums, and events I am asked to speak at. I do not get compensated for babysitting costs or gas expenses. Full disclosure, I have received a few bottles of wine for some of my lectures. Okay. Everyone agrees that expecting more from our children is a good thing. Helping our children reach their full potential is a good thing. But we cannot diminish the need to reach these goals the right way without the harmful side effects. A medication that cures someone's heart disease while destroying their liver would never make it onto the shelves, or would be recalled the minute these side effects were discovered. We need to demand a recall of these policies that may have started out with good intention, but have been shown to have profound and damaging side effects. We must all ask ourselves, what price are we willing to pay? According to John King, losing this current generation of children is a price he's willing to pay to experiment with these new reforms. Those are my children he's gambling with. Those are all my children that he finds expendable. The happiness and the well-being of my children is not a price I'm willing to pay. Yes, I am a special interest group. My special interest is my children and every other child in the public school system of New York State. And my hope is that if all our hard work pays off, my special interests will one day get back their love of learning.
Thank you very much. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm on your group list also.
Yes, you are.
Jeanette, you know we all support making great change here and that we all are of one heart in protecting our children and their well-being. So I ask you, what specific actions are you looking for us, who are all on the same team, to accomplish going forward? What are you looking for us to do specifically?
we're realizing that really this change can't be made without legislators. That, as parents, we can speak up and we can contact people and write letters and opt our children out of the test. But the only way that really change can be made is with the people that are putting these policies in place. And we, as parents, don't directly have control over them. Legislators do. So the legislators have to vote on these policies, everything that's been said today about different ways that you can go about stopping this train that's been moving along, that it really needs to be from legislators who vote in the Board of Regents members, who have some control over them, who then have control over John King. There's been, our New York Allies page called for John King's resignation, and a number of legislators also did put that out and called for his resignation. That is something that we'd like to see pressure put on about changing the leadership, because we see him as being somebody who, although he may be forced to come listen, I know I was told personally that he, before the first failed round of town hall meetings, he had said to the PTA that he did not want parents to be allowed to speak at all. He was going to just speak to them and the PTA actually said to him, we can't sign on to that because the parents would flip. So, he's really not interested in what anybody has to say. Recently, he said in an article that, what he learned from Massachusetts is that, when the going gets tough, you just wait, wait and dig your heels in and eventually things smooth out. So that's his theory, that if he just kind of hangs in there, all this will kind of die down, that we will go away, us parents. I don't think they expected after last spring that we would continue this and we would ramp this up even further. I think they thought we would just, quiet down and go away. And we're just getting started. This is...
So in essence, what you'd like us to do is lobby our state senators and lobby the non-Republican members of the Assembly across the aisle to come to the realization that we need great change.
Absolutely. And I understand that New York City is really the source of, especially for the Assembly, I know that's where the power is held and a lot of the big decisions are made. So I understand that you're trying to do your part here, but that it's a lot of, we will try ourselves to put pressure on some of these legislators also in New York City.
Assemblyman Graf, if I can interrupt you, Assemblyman Graf said something very interesting to a former speaker. There's an election coming up next year. Your voice will be heard, and you can make news then too, so don't forget that, so keep it up.
That's right.
And just understand that right now, King he's a mouthpiece. He's out there doing what he's supposed to do. And what I like to say, I don't want to switch the focus away from this issue and make him the issue, okay? Because right now, he's your biggest ally.
Oh, I always say that we should be paying him for all the PR, because
every time he speaks up.
Absolutely, I get another 200 people on my page.
So,
yeah.
All I'm saying is, and I'm going to keep saying that, and I've said that publicly, and we wrote a letter saying that he needs to go back out and start doing more of these forums.
Yes.
And one of the pieces in our letter that we sent him was this time, stop talking at people.
Yeah.
And try listening to people.
Yeah.
Okay, listen to the message that's out there, all right? So all I'm saying to you is, please, and I'm asking everybody, don't shift the focus here.
Yeah.
I want to keep I'd like to keep the focus on what they're implementing, what we're doing here, And the bottom line is, there's an old thing in politics when your opponent's beating up himself, the only time you stop him is to give him a drink of water so he can continue.
Yeah. Very true.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have Marianne Adrian. And following Marianne is Deborah Brooks.
Good evening. Thank you so much for allowing me to come and speak tonight. My name is Marianne Adrian. And first, I'd like to say from an earlier speaker, it was mentioned that Long Island had a 1% ineffective teacher rating with the state testing on their APPRs. And I just wanted to say that I don't think that that's something to be celebrated, that it's being considered an achievement when it comes at the expense of the mental health and well-being of our children. So I go into why I'm here. I'm really nervous, so I apologize.
Can you hold the microphone a little closer and relax?
Yeah, but then you'll have to hear me. Okay, so I'm here today because I am the proud parent of a 7th and 4th grader and one in pre-K. My older children have had great experiences in school up until last year. They had great teachers. They grew year over year. They loved going to school. They made friends. They socialized. They played. They had fun, everything it should be. And last year, there was a tremendous change in that, particularly in my 3rd grader. And he would, within the first couple weeks of school, he came home every day crying. He didn't want to go back. He would just beg me, "Mommy, don't make me go back to school. I don't want to go. We just keep getting tested." And, you know, I didn't really think too much of it. I thought maybe he was just being a kid and didn't want to go to school. But then I started looking into it a little bit more as my 6th grader at the time also didn't really want to go to school. And they were both experiencing many headaches, stomach aches. They were going to the nurse. In fact, I think they spent more time at the nurse than they did in the classroom. So I really started to see this change. They got 2 to 3 hours of homework every night. And it was very stressful. You know, it was just too much. They weren't being kids anymore. They had to go to school, have test prep done all day, come home, do 2 to 3 hours of homework, and then there was really no time for them to be kids. During the state tests, I did allow them to take it last year because I didn't really grasp what was going on. So they took the state tests, and the first day of the state test of the ELA, my 3rd grader came home crying, and he was begging me not to make him go back. And he did finish out the 3 days, and then he did it all again for the math. I, again, still didn't understand what was going on. And then when I really started looking into it, I realized what I did to him. I made him take these tests. He was 9 years old. He had to sit there for 90 minutes a day, 3 days each for ELA, and then the same thing for the math. And to me, that's just child abuse. He didn't get the material. He was frustrated, and it was long. It was very long for him. My 6th grader at the time, he did okay with the test, mentally wise, but he witnessed his friends crying. One by one, they would go out of the room crying. They couldn't finish the test in time. These were honor students. These were students that took a lot of pride in doing well. And so he witnessed his friends going through all this mental anxiety. When I started doing the research, I joined social media groups such as Long Island Opt-Out, and I learned a lot. And I learned mostly, first off, that there were other parents out there like me, unfortunately, that were dealing with the same things. I also realized and understood that my children were no longer getting a well-rounded education. They were being taught to the test. They were being taught the math and ELA. They were not really diving into any science or any history, and everything was being tied to these state tests. These tests, from what I understand, the teachers aren't even allowed to view them, so they don't even know. My question has always been, how do you know that what they're teaching in the classroom is what's correlated on the test if nobody's allowed to see them? No, I would be amiss if I didn't say that I think students should be tested. I think teachers should be evaluated. And maybe this curriculum isn't so bad. Maybe, I think it is kind of bad. But maybe it's not. Maybe if you separate them all out and you do things separately, it might be better. So I'm not opposed to these things being in place, but I am opposed to the teacher evaluations being tied to them. I think that it just fosters an environment of stress. I think that it puts a lot of pressure on the teachers. I think they've done a great job. Again, this year and last year, the teachers have been phenomenal, even through all these changes. This year, just recently, my fourth grader now, my now fourth grader, he was doing math homework, and he was getting very frustrated. He was doing it, he was on it for a half hour, about a half hour, and all of a sudden he just picked up his book and he threw it across the room and he said, "I'm done. That's it. I can't do this anymore." However, I will say he does have a little bit of humor in him. When I picked up his book and I looked at it, the questions that he just wrote furiously at and through the book was, what is the relationship between 6,627? What is the relationship between the sixes in 6,627? And his answer was, there is none. They broke up. He then answered another question. What is the relationship between the sixes and 665? And he said, they're just together, that's all. So he does have a sense of humor, and it's been a while really since I've seen him have that with his schoolwork. I also have a big concern with the data mining that's going on in regards to all of these new standards that are in place. Our rights as parents have been reduced with the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. 2 years ago, they added verbiage stating that New York State can now share data with third-party vendors who are contracted with the state. As a parent, I'm not allowed to opt out of that. Once my district uploads it to the state, that's it. They have free reign on my child's data. I have a very, very big problem with that. It's on a cloud system. In Bloom does not guarantee the safety of that information. And again, I have no way to opt them out of this. It's state mandated. So that, aside from all the testing, I think that would be my biggest concern of something that really needs to be looked at and taken care of, because there are no guarantees. And I'm sure that although the state is taking measures to protect that data, people can get into the system and they can hack it. And these are my children. These are my prized possessions. I'd actually like to end with a little bit of a story. Just recently, we're talking about getting out there and spreading the message and getting people on board. And mine, for me, started at home with my husband. Although he's very supportive, he sometimes gets frustrated with all the time that I spend reading things and doing things. And just the other night, we had a forum in my town where we had over 110 people attend, which was fantastic. But interestingly, we were sitting down on the couch, and we were watching the History Channel, and they were doing a segment on Mesopotamia. And they were going on about the Babylonian king Hammurabi, which I can barely even pronounce, who expanded the city-state of Babylon, I am cheating, I wrote it down, across the Euphrates River. And they were talking about his code and his standards and his rules. And I turned around and I said to my husband, you should go get up our daughter right now, my almost 4-year-old. He said, why would I do that? She can get a head start. Bring her out here. And he said, what are you talking about? This is what she's going to be learning in first grade. And the light bulb went off, and he said, honey, I love you. Go back on the computer. I'm in this not just for my children, but for others. I'm in it, I want this to change. I was originally of the mindset that maybe the curriculum wasn't so bad, and maybe as a framework it's not, but the teachers have no freedom to work with it and to make it their own and to not make this a one-size-fits-all education. My children are losing out. Their future is not as bright as it should be in this regard. So I'm here because I want to ask you, well, first of all, thank you for having this and for going forward, but to ask you to keep going and implore you to get this out. This needs to leave because I need my happy children back. So.
Thank you very much. Deborah Brooks, who will be followed by Jane Finkelstein. And just, again, it's about 10 to 8. We're going to try to get to everybody. We want to get to everybody, so please, especially if you have written testimony, do your best to summarize it so that we can hear from everybody, and we will stay until they kick us out.
I tried to edit. I really did. You can see all my scratch outs. I'll do my best. So good evening. My name is Deborah Brooks. I'm a proud member of that special interest group called Parents. I join with all the other parents in New York State who care for and love their children and who are deeply concerned about what is happening to their public school education. My daughter is my personal special interest. As I was starting to get involved in all of this, I know nothing about education law. I went to public school a really long time ago, as you can tell by my hair. And so I really started researching, and all of the concepts that are convoluted and intertwined in this are like trying to peel away at one gigantic, never-ending onion. You just keep peeling and peeling and peeling, and the more you peel, the more layers and shoots you find, and it's convoluted at best. But it helps that I'm a lawyer, because I'm able to analyze and really understand some of the law involved here. During my legal career, I've appeared everywhere from state courts to the Supreme Court of the United States. I was an assistant public defender for Baltimore City, where I represented indigent inner-city juveniles who are the saddest children I have ever met. And I also represented adults. I am a former assistant district attorney from Nassau County, but by far the most important job I've ever held in my entire life, and I've had a lot of jobs, is mother to my 9-year-old bright and precocious daughter, who is a 4th grader in the Port Washington School District. She is my current and perhaps most demanding boss. By now we all know about high-stakes testing, how it changes the nature of the classroom environment, the nature of the classroom teaching and assignments, the nature of homework, and along with it the resulting unnecessary levels of stress and anxiety, both for students as well as for teachers. The most recent round of standardized tests, where they are obtuse and convoluted and developmentally inappropriate material, for example, for 8-year-olds, a poem that they had to dissect that was written by Leo Tolstoy, were written to include material that was never taught to children in the classroom. Parents teach children to trust teachers and to follow rules and behave in school. The people in power who imposed these tests upon our children violated that trust, and they abused their positions of power. Their behavior, if not intended to be harmful, and we all have to hope that that was not the intent, nevertheless was careless, reckless, and cruel, with a complete and flagrant disregard for the psychological and emotional well-being of our children. It was a dereliction of duty with a singular sense of arrogant self-importance. To say otherwise is to defy logic and negate the events of the past year. This result is neither what the law contemplates nor what it allows. Allow me to focus on that portion of the No Child Left Behind Act, which is titled, aptly enough, Academic Assessments. What does the federal law mandate of these assessments? First, it mandates that the assessments be of high quality. Next, the law mandates that the assessments, and then I quote, I'll try to be brief, shall produce individual student interpretive, descriptive, and diagnostic reports that allow parents, teachers, and principals to understand and address the specific academic needs of students. Also, it requires that the reports be provided to parents, teachers, and principals as soon as is practicably possible after the assessment is given, in an understandable and uniform format, and to the extent practicable, in a language that parents can understand. I'm not quite sure if that means meaning in the parents' native speaking language, or just not a bunch of gobbledygook that we all have to try to figure out what it all means. There's more. The assessments shall enable itemized score analyses to be produced and reported so that parents, teachers, principals, and administrators can interpret and address the specific academic needs of students, so forth and so on. My Board of Education in Port Washington has a policy statement which reads, evaluation of the learning process should be relevant, purposeful, and informative for both the student and teacher. Notwithstanding any of the above legal guarantees in the federal law, what I received in the mail in mid-September, several months after my daughter had sat for these tests, before I knew that she didn't have to, actually, really, along with all the other parents of public school children, was a report with meaningless numbers on it. There was nothing interpretive, nothing descriptive, nothing diagnostic about that report. There was nothing to allow any teacher or parent to interpret, understand, and/or address a child's specific needs. There was nothing relevant, purposeful, or informative about either the tests or the report. And the quality of the test speaks for itself. Neither the tests that were given to the children nor the results provided to parents and teachers pass legal muster. And just as an aside, when I spoke to the assistant superintendent in charge of curriculum in Port Washington, when she told me about the MAP assessments that were going to be given, I said, well, why are you giving MAP assessments in September? Didn't my child just take a round of tests in April? She said, yes, but the test really didn't tell us anything, and so we need a benchmark so that we can move forward. And I said, okay, and what happens after you get that benchmark? And she said, well, we won't really know right now because we don't know how to interpret the MAP tests yet. So when we meet for the superintendent's conference in November, then we'll have a better idea of where to go forward. And I said, okay, so a couple of months is going to pass before you're able to inform every child's instruction. So in the meantime, you're just going to sally forth with the Common Core curriculum. And she said yes. So there will be another round of MAP assessments in January, only a couple months after the superintendent's meeting, and then again at the end of the year. Let's not confuse the issue. Although the 3rd grade to 8th grade tests are a federal mandate, assuming the mandate itself is valid, such mandate does not by any means confer legitimacy upon the assessments. The standardized assessments, as they have been for years, are inherently unreliable and unreasonable. To my mind's eye, they fail to fulfill, let alone minimally meet, the requirements of this federal law, and therefore they violate the law. Those who are responsible for putting them into motion need to be held accountable. Assessing a child's educational worth via high-stakes standardized testing is just plain wrong. As we have seen, in many cases, it is cruel and destructive behavior being sanctioned and imposed by the government. There is a national obsession with invalid and unreliable high-stakes testing as government forces school districts to funnel more and more money down the testing pipeline. Testing companies churn out invalid and unreliable tests and make egregious mistakes over and over again, yet we continue to funnel millions of dollars their way. More baffling to me, government allows them to keep our children's completed test papers shrouded in secrecy, as though our children's work product was a heavily guarded national secret. We taxpayers paid for those tests. Apparently, government has forgotten who is meant to be the main beneficiary of those tests. Transparency is needed. Indeed, it is legally required on the results end. How can you use the results of a test to improve pedagogy when you do not even have access to the test or the results? It is impossible to use a test you can't see to inform instruction. And yet, victim to this clandestine activity, teachers and children are threatened, either with losing their jobs or being held back if their performance does not improve fast enough. Teachers have become so fearful that where once a bright student was an asset, she is now a liability. It is virtually impossible to show improvement with a child who has scored a 4. What can be said about an evaluation system that penalizes teachers and bright children? All this and manipulation of cut scores add up to a rather important set of reasons to invalidate the entire process. I will not lose sleep at night if Pearson ceases to line its coffers at the expense of my child. Those who govern us have a legal responsibility to guarantee that the tests, if they must be given, actually measure what teachers teach and students learn. I suggest to you the high-stakes tests never will accomplish what the law requires. Replace them with valid forms of student, teacher, and school assessment. Assessment must be designed to be diagnostic and developmentally appropriate, with the purpose of enabling teachers and parents to address the specific academic needs of every child. This may require a one-on-one assessment rather than pencils and bubbles. The process must be child-centric. Early education and childhood development specialists need to be consulted. The law, as currently written, requires it. Unless and until an assessment is designed to be diagnostic and allow teachers and parents to address the specific academic needs of students, it will continue to violate federal law and therefore will be invalid, not to mention a colossal waste of money. We have come to understand that the Common Core program was put together with the backing of corporate reformers. It was neither piloted nor tested, nor was it rolled out gradually. Rather, it was steamrolled upon our children. It has our teachers running in every which direction. Our educational system was not in such dire straits, so in need of drastic reform, so compellingly and pressingly deficient, so urgent, that elected and appointed officials had to roll out a new curriculum program that had never been tested and in such full force. Development of a new curriculum, anything new, takes time, and it takes constant consultation with and participation by appropriate childhood development specialists and educators. The implementation process takes time as well. I highly doubt that Bill Gates would roll out a new computer program without beta testing and tweaking it first. That would be very unsound business practice. Why have our children been treated less importantly? I'll try to skip a little bit. It's hard to believe that this whole agenda is truly about our children. There is a corporate-driven machine out there that wants to reduce classroom learning to rote memorization, embrace high-stakes testing, and dismiss any kind of critical pedagogy as mere whimsy. We should be preparing our children to be good people and citizens, independent thinkers who can tap into their own potentials and abilities, not fodder for global competition. Of course our children need to learn how to read and write effectively. Of course they need to understand math. But they also need social skills and empathy. They need to be free to be creative, individual thinkers who also know how to work as team players. They need healthy minds and healthy bodies. Art, music, literary fiction, civics, recess, and physical education are critical to growing minds and bodies. A reasonable lunch period wouldn't hurt either. Our children are in school for only a short while. Bill Gates has declared, we will not know if this stuff works for at least a decade. I don't care if the trial period is only 1 year. 1 year of my child's education is 1 year she will never get back. Our children's education and childhood are not expendable. We need to protect and properly educate them now. Yesterday, Regent Cashin, I hope that's how you pronounce her name, an experienced educator publicly stated, teachers have been telling us for years that parts of the Common Core are not developmentally appropriate. We did not listen to them. We need to listen to our teachers and develop a committee of practitioners who can make appropriate changes in these standards, quote unquote. I hope they do so, and soon. Race to the Top is the latest of several efforts to leverage federal resources to redirect educational policy. Governor Cuomo fought hard for Race to the Top grant money. New York State was awarded close to $700 million. Was victory worth the cost? When you begin to account for all the money that must be spent to put into place all the promises that Governor Cuomo made to the federal government, money for curriculum revision, Common Core training, Common Core materials, APPR training, local assessment, state scoring, developmental costs, updated technology infrastructure, so on. How much money is left over? I'm sorry, I don't have anything that regards Long Island, but I did find something on the internet that I think is a very comprehensive study. It's a study that was released 1 year ago by Dr. Ken Mitchell, who is District Superintendent of the South Orangetown School District, working with the Center for Research, Regional Education, and Outreach at SUNY New Paltz. Distilled to its essence, Dr. Mitchell proves that the cost to implement Race to the Top mandates far exceed the funding. In Rockland County, for example, leaders projected a total 4-year cost of almost $11 million compared to the aggregate revenue of $400,000 Race to the Top money. That's a $10 million deficit. Dr. Mitchell stated, there are serious challenges to this federal program's validity and the research upon which it is based. Without substantive validation, New York State and U.S. taxpayers are funding a grand and costly experiment that has the potential to take the public education in the wrong direction at a time when we need to be more competitive than ever before. You have the opportunity to change this course before our school systems are so radically and unalterably changed, perhaps for the worst, at a great financial loss to taxpayers and a great risk to impressionable children. My district did not take Race to the Top money. Nevertheless, we had to implement and pay for all the promises made. I urge you to demand that the people responsible for forcing us onto this path reverse course and abandon this ill-considered and poorly implemented policy. We have been told we still don't have the full curriculum. The tests have not been developed. We are told they are flying the plane even as they build it. Can we afford to board that plane before it's finished? Can we afford to finish building that plane? Isn't it more critical to spend the limited education dollars restoring teachers, teachers' aides, and librarians? I wanted to address just the opt-out movement for a moment. As people are opting out, superintendents are actually putting in writing that they will threaten the students. They'll force them to take the tests. They tell the parents that they won't give services to the children if the children don't take the tests. They're really bullying and harassing the parents. And basically saying, you don't have the right to do this. Well, I say parents do have the right. The right is in the Constitution, and it's in the common law. The New York Court of Appeals has stated, it is the natural right as well as the legal duty of a parent to care for, control, and protect his child from potential harm, whatever the source. And absent a clear showing of misfeasance, courts should not interfere with that delicate responsibility. Neither should any branch of government. We are trying to protect our children, and in some cases, we're being reviled for it. We have been chided by superintendents and told to homeschool or put our children into private schools. These are irrational and illegal government responses. We want our children to acquire all the skills required to live in our ever-changing society. We also want them shielded from practices potentially detrimental to their emotional and psychological well-being. We are experts on our own children. We will always have a greater responsibility and vested interest in our child's future than any government or government official. Parents have a constitutional liberty interest to direct the upbringing and education of our child. These rights, guaranteed by the Constitution, may not be abridged by unreasonable policy. Let us not forget that our children are our most precious resources. Please protect those of us who choose to opt our children out. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Jane Finkelstein, and following Jane will be Mitchell Rubenstein.
Hi, my name is Jane Finkelstein. I'm from Wantor. My children attend the Levittown School District schools. First, I'd like to thank you so very much for allowing us the opportunity to speak and to be heard. I also would like to personally thank Mr. McDonough for listening to me from the very beginning when nobody, and Mr. Graff too, when nobody would listen to us. And it's kind of fascinating to watch how how it has unfolded. Let me say, Jeanette Duderman's first class in the opt-out movement. She taught me so well that in Levittown, 187 opted out in math, and 124 opted out in English. But for me to get this information was one of the most difficult things that I had to do, which as a parent, I have the right to know. I'm going to go on Mrs. the lady that spoke in front of me in terms of opting out and superintendents. I have a question. It seems in Suffolk County, these superintendents are much more open and willing to speak out against what is going on with our children. And here in Nassau, I feel sometimes we have a little bit of a problem when we try to educate the parents of the truth, and we all know it's the truth. And then when they go to the powers in their school and the administration, they get railroaded, so to speak. And I just don't get it. And somebody said to me, oh, that's because they're retiring. Is that that's not the case. I mean, Dr. Eller, I would also like to say that because the movement is growing and we're trying to educate parents and that we're not allowed to speak in schools and that we're being silenced, we have created our own, as you said, education forums that have to be held outside the school buildings where we pay our tax dollars. We did such a great job in Levittown, Miss Adrian especially, and I will give credit myself, that we held a forum, I'm sure you must have heard about it on Monday, that was about 150 people, mostly parents, some teachers, that came to hear Jeanette Dudeman, Dr. Rella, Yvonne Gasparino, and Mola Kilfoyle. They are now on the top hit parade, and I cannot tell you how many people are looking for them to come to their districts to speak. That makes me feel wonderful, but I say to myself, is that supposed to be my job? Shouldn't it be maybe the people in the school district's job to educate parents what is really going on? I have a little bit of a problem with that. To the point that, I mean, to me, I get $0 to do it, and it's the greatest satisfaction in my life, because the bottom line is, it's all about the children. There's only one agenda that all us parents have on the opt-out movement. It's for our kids, for the safety and the well-being and the health of our children, and public education and what they're going to learn. So that is the other thing I'd like to bring up is when they were talking about the cumulative effect of learning, that personally affects me because I now have a 9th grader and that is going to be taking 2 Regencies. One is a Common Core. The teachers never, ever taught Common Core algebra in 9th grade. So my child has to sit through 2 Regencies, and then you're going to take, they're choosing to take the greater grade for their transcript. This is where your high school rates of graduation are going to plummet. And I just don't get from when I think about this, I've never been the same, how everybody could continue doing things that are so wrong, hurting the children. It's all about the children. And I thank you so very much for listening.
Thank you.
She's here.
Assemblyman Rott mentioned someone after Mitchell? Rubenstein?
You called one person as a backup. Who was the next person? He just stepped up. For me?
Lisa Katz.
Lisa Katz. Was he the next one?
No, Mitchell Rubenstein.
Mitchell? Okay. Tracy? Yes.
Let me see. You can't pronounce that name?
Come on. Come on. Jeez. You need the Italians to pronounce that name for you? Irish.
Good evening. I'm Tracy DiCepolo. I'd like to thank you for inviting us all here tonight to your forum, and thank you, Mr. Saladino, for inviting me to come to speak about some of the frustrations parents, teachers, and others in our community have about the implementation of the Common Core. I'm a parent of 2 children in the Massapequa School District. My husband is a product of Massapequa School District, and because of that, we chose to raise our children in Massapequa. I have also started a Facebook group. It's much smaller than some of the other people you've heard from. It's called the Heart of Massapequa Public Schools, and it was originally formed to get parents involved. I attended my first board meeting earlier in the year when teachers were being laid off at a very large rate, and wanted to find out what was going on, and I felt that a lot of my neighbors and friends were very uninformed, and the purpose of the group was to get people informed, not to take a position on anything, but just give them the information so they could make the proper decisions. So I do have some experience with Common Core. I have a 4th grader and a 5th grader. I see their homework every night. I also have communicated with some of the 400 or 500 parents that are in my group and seen their posts and their frustrations. And tonight I'd like to share a little bit about my observations of those posts and speak collectively for the group who has given me permission to speak for them, not just for myself. I'd like to start by saying that most of us understand the intention behind the Common Core curriculum and standards, rather the standards. We understand that there are many who support it and they don't believe that they're doing anything wrong or harmful to hurt our children. They feel that they're advancing our children toward career and college readiness. This is noble, and we understand that there's a desire to evaluate our students and to do so in a more standard way. I don't believe anyone here in this room or even in our community would argue that the solution to our educational problems are to have a less organized system or make curriculum much easier and stop evaluating everybody. However, what we're doing with the implementation of the Common Core, evaluating the teacher in the school rather than focusing on the children and the students' trajectory and what their performance data means to them individually, that is wrong, and in everything the student has been lost. Regardless of how the Common Core was intended, the implementation of the curriculum has been creating anxiety. I see it in home and I see it in my community. Both of my children are part of the gifted program. They're in the magnet program in my school district. Last year they took the spring test. My daughter failed the math part of the test. She's a gifted student. So I've secured a tutor for her, and I'll do whatever I need to get her to where she needs to be. My son, on the other hand, got a perfect score on the math assessments. He, too, has anxiety because he knows that those tests are tricky, and he's concerned for his fellow students and how will they ever be able to pass these tests when the intent of the test is to trick the students. He at 10 years old realizes that there's not any one right answer, but rather two plausible answers, and who knows how they're going to be graded. You know, my fellow neighbors have also expressed through social media the problems. Teachers with master's degrees, teachers with parents with master's degrees, MBAs, people with law degrees cannot figure out the homework. It's frustrating, and there are tantrums in my house too about how homework is to be done, and it's very difficult. Many of my friends and neighbors have been sharing their frustrations with the math and the ELA this year. You know, sometimes perception is working reality, even if it's not entirely representative of every student in the state. We must understand that what people believe to be real is real to them, and we need to do something about it. Students and teachers are feeling great pressure to perform. Unfortunately, because teachers feel that there is such a high level of reward and job security, and students feel the same to please, and their desire to please the teachers and the parents, and that they may be failing them, this anxiety is just unbearable. In essence, we are creating with Common Core the exact environment for teachers and students that is contrary to our stated goals of higher performance, learning, and standards. In addition, you know, there is growing research that incentivizing and pressuring performance only works for simplistic and rote skills and tasks that have simplistic goals and highly defined behaviors associated with them. Teaching is complex, and the complex interaction between family, society, child, adult, learner, teacher, administrator, politician, expectation, struggle, success, reward, and beyond. If higher standards are in fact our goal, we must embrace the notion that an environment that encourages both academic and professional risk and creativity is exactly what's needed. But unfortunately, what effectively is happening is the opposite under the current implementation of the Common Core. Teachers do not feel like they are empowered by the curriculum. They feel that they are being punished by it. If we were to see Common Core as an example of the successful change, we would observe teachers feeling that they can be flexible within their class structure, scope, and sequence while still incorporating the useful elements of the Common Core that are made readily available to them. Teachers need to feel ownership, and they do not. Excuse me. The Common Core or any reform is to be if the Common Core or any reform is to be recognized as effective, teachers should feel that the Common Core is beneficial to their students, and it is a new, applied, innovative way for their students to learn and an easier way to assess how their students are doing. If Common Core reform is to be any reform is to be recognized as effective by parents, we should feel that our children are being challenged to the point where their interest, effort, rigor, enthusiasm are simultaneously peaked, and that the curriculum has the ability to meet their child, where they are academically and gently move them forward in a useful direction. Challenge should not become hopeless stress. Instead, parents watch on as the love of learning fades in their child and demands outpace the natural development of their child. They currently feel that their child is being treated inhumanely and that the data their minds generate and related to them personally is under attack and exploitation. If Common Core or any reform is to be recognized as effective by the students, they should feel that their social, academic, and emotional creativity is encouraged. Students would be encouraged to internalize the factual information and the rigid methods of academia while being encouraged to experiment and deviate from the prescribed pathway so as to make learning more relevant and meaningful. If college and career readiness is a stated goal and outcome for our students under Common Core, then the feedback regarding testing should be rapidly and highly specified to each learner, not only speaking to their weaknesses but also to their strengths. This would be characterized by a notion that testing is but a part of the greater whole of the entirety of the learning experience and would reduce the importance of a single few moments in a single day at the end of the year during a final as being the sum total of the evaluation of what the child did and the teacher, for that matter, having accomplished during all of their quarters or semesters at work. This would result in the data children generate as being translated into meaningful communications to the student as to what their testing means to them, and the communications to the student as to what their testing means to their potential future. For example, if children do well on their ELA assessments, they should be encouraged to engage in fields using creative writing or taking courses that supplement their performance. If they're good at math, they should be encouraged to take science classes or physics classes. My daughter wants to be a scientist, but after her math scores, she's no longer interested in that. So, a lot of the things that we wanted to talk about have been addressed already, but before we close, we do offer some solutions. We applaud that you are trying to find legislation to help solve some of these problems, and we implore you to continue to do so. Perhaps instead of declaring a standard and applying it to all in a one-size-fits-all hope that all adjust, there should be a common-sense rollback and a rollout. Leaders should earn back the trust of their constituents by rescinding the current implementation and revising it to be more gradual. If the rollout was more gradual, with slow introduction that began sometime in the primary grades with a regular periodic evaluation each successful year or two that involved real teacher feedback, this implementation could be more meaningful and less threatening. Perhaps the realities would change. We also need to stop declaring edicts and then observing what happens instead of testing well-founded hypotheses and observe the outcomes and then declare the proper direction. In closing, the very word education is derived from Latin and can be understood to have the meaning to bring out or to lead forth. We must ask ourselves, you must ask, how will we lead forth? What are we bringing out of our children? If compliance, reduced creativity, fear, anger, and a standardized population is what we seek, then I suppose we move forward with our current path. But if we wish to bring out the very best in our children, to awaken within each child their true potential, excitement, variety, and learning, and the best of education, I would ask that you listen to me and the others here tonight and continue what you are doing and do whatever is necessary to help us out of this very difficult time in education. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for your patience waiting to testify.
But I think I was under 5.
Thank you.
Tracy.
Thank you for being here. Ray Hameson? And then Lisa, you'll be next.
Hi, I just want to thank you gentlemen, first of all, for having this forum, and especially you, Assemblyman Graff, for fighting this fight up in Albany for the last 2 years plus. My name is Ray Hames. I'm in the North Belmore School District, the same one these ladies were in. So apparently I'm lucky because my youngest son graduated in 2011 before most of this got started. Speaking to you tonight, therefore, as somebody who is more worried about the future of this country because of the Common Core. I mean, I have no degrees in education, but I'm at least somewhat anecdotally expert in a part of the educational spectrum that isn't talked about as much here tonight. I've been extremely blessed in my life with 2 very high achiever kids. My daughter obtained 2 Ivy League degrees, an engineering degree from the University of Pennsylvania, and a business degree from the Wharton Business School. And my son is currently studying computational biology and artificial intelligence at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Both of them benefited tremendously from some extremely dedicated and innovative teachers and innovative programs in our school districts. And these programs are right on the chopping block because of Common Core. When my daughter was in 3rd grade, this is just representative, but her teacher, Miss Arnell, said something to me that was the most amazing thing any teacher had ever said to me. She said, "I believe that every child can learn, but not necessarily all in the same way, and not necessarily every day. And I believe it is my job to assess every child every day to see what will work for that child that day." That's very representative of a lot of teachers I've run across throughout both my children's school career. In the elementary school, they have a program for gifted children called the Alpha Program. It's got a very unique premise, and it's what is genius? To them, genius is the ability to look at something that everybody else sees, but in a new and different way. You and I watch a train go by and we say, "Damn, I missed the train." Albert Einstein watches a train go by and comes up with the theory of relativity. That's what this program was designed to foster. In our high school district, they also have a very incredible science research program that the kids sign up, and from sophomore year through senior year, they find something that they're passionate about. They reach out to college professors, engineers, scientists, and they get them to work as mentors, and they do actual, real, state-of-the-art science research. When my daughter was in high school, she did state-of-the-art cancer research, and my son developed a tool for optimizing large-scale solar arrays. So, I mean, these programs are doing so much for our kids. I mean, it forces them to stretch, to grow, to achieve, to expand their horizons. And all that is imperiled because of Common Core. You know, you've heard a lot of heartfelt testimony tonight about how this one-size-fits-all approach is devastating to the special needs kids and to the kids struggling to grasp all these concepts, but it's also stifling creativity and, you know, the ability of those who will lead our country into the information age. I mean, if we lose the next generation of Steve Jobses, Henry Fords, and Albert Einsteins, because effective programs like the ones I've been talking about are cut because scarce resources are directed towards teaching, towards standardized tests, I do fear that our America's best days are, in fact, going to be behind us. It doesn't need to be that way. I think we need to keep fighting this. I know you guys are leading the charge. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I think the programs you mentioned, a novel concept here, maybe the way to go is to model in places that aren't doing as well model the great programs that your children had the opportunity to go through, rather than taking them away from the students of that district.
And,
through
and
what we're
every
doing
year,
now.
I hear that, oh, they're going to cut them this year, they're going to cut them this year. You heard that one lady who's created all this Facebook stuff, she's in my district.
Yep.
I was talking to her, she says, yep, they're going to get rid of it. I mean, because
We should be-
everything's going towards this Common Core stuff.
We should be
and
looking
these-
at those as examples for other districts, not the other way around.
All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Lisa Katz?
Hi. First, I want to start off by thanking you for having this forum. I'm actually going to say something that isn't on my written testimony, because just today I was driving home with my youngest daughter, who's a kindergartner, and she's a young kindergartner, she's 4. And dance class next week is canceled because it's Halloween. So I said, oh, you don't have dance next week? And she said, oh, what about school? I go, no, you're still going to go to school next week. And she's like, I don't like school. I go, oh, yeah, you do. What do you mean you don't like school? She goes, I hate math. Now, we're 2 months into the school year. She's like, I just don't like it. I'm like, oh, come on, how do you say that, you know? And then her answer to me was, every day we're tested, and every day I get a big fat 0. This is a 4-year-old that doesn't know the difference yet. You know, I have 3 children. So I have a 15-year-old, I have a 7-year-old, and I have this 4-year-old, soon to be 5. And to hear her say that she doesn't like school is disheartening. My 7-year-old doesn't really like it either, because every day they're tested. Now, I live in a really great district. I live in North Merrick, which ties into the North Belmore district that he was just talking about. So those programs are in our high schools. I'm hoping that they don't cut it, because my son is eligible for any of those programs. Now, but my 2 youngest children are the reason that I'm fighting this, because I want them to have the education that he received. Over the summer, I had to get a math tutor, because my first grader couldn't add 6 + 6 = 12. I saw that as a problem, because what first grader goes into 2nd grade not knowing how to add? Well, she was able to do all the envisioned work and all the Common Core math. As a matter of fact, she tested properly, is what I was being told. So they did give her services, and then once she tested out of the services, she just went on to do the math. And I do find that the math is inappropriate. The children are at a young age learning to fill in bubbles. I mean, my kindergartner, her math work is filling in a bubble. She has to match the pictures to the numbers, and it's A, B, and C. This is kindergarten. You know, studies have shown that children do well and flourish when they play. Music and arts are involved with their learning. Now, my kindergartner also, I mean, thank God my school didn't cut this. They, to teach them to read, because in kindergarten you have to learn how to read, they are doing it through song. So they sing the word song, R-E-D spells red. Every day she sings, R-E-D spells red. She can't write her name properly, but she knows how to spell red because of the music. And every day she sings the songs that they sing in class to work with them to learn English and to learn how to write properly. This week is Ribbon Week, and today happens to be Bully Prevention Awareness. And you know, we're teaching our youngest children how to recognize a bully and not become one. Ironically, we are letting our children be bullied by the very people in charge of the educational overhaul. Our children are being told they are not good enough if they don't score high on exams. And even every day it's a math quick check, and the children know what they get. I mean, my kindergartner knows that she gets a big fat 0 every day because she can't fill in the bubble. In some cases, they are being sent in for early intervention services so that they can perform better on these exams. I said that. And then our children are being used as guinea pigs in a countrywide educational experiment that Bill Gates himself said at a Harvard speech that we will not know if this new educational changes are working for generations. You know, I find that alarming because my children don't have generations or even years to spare for us to get it right. So.
Thank you. Cece Wong Townsend. And after that, I have one more card from Tim Taylor. Is there anybody else that submitted a card?
Hi. I thank you
Good
for putting together the legislation to stop Common Core. I have nothing prepared today because I was actually not prepared to really speak. And the focus lately has really been about, of course, my child and all the children in this country that are being subjected to Common Core. But I think lately, the past week, I've been really trying to figure out why Common Core standards gets such a gut reaction out of me beyond just being a mom. And I wanted to express to you that I think it's because I identify with what this high stakes over testing has become in our curriculum. And it dates back to my personal history. My parents fled China to go to Hong Kong to escape communism. At the age of 4, they prepped me because I was in the British education system that had high-stakes standardized testing, that you had to test from kindergarten to go into elementary school. The high stakes involved making children at kindergarten age take an exam that will determine which elementary school they attended. And let me explain to you what that elementary school setup was. It was that it would define if you were substandard, average, or gifted. So it was the school itself. So you would be labeled or stereotyped in that category. And I will tell you that it was very difficult. I had a very difficult time in kindergarten. My mom, and I think the past year, there are like moments where I feel I have these flashback moments. It's almost like I feel like I was a veteran of Common Core standards way back when. So what I wanted you to know is that those high stakes, they resound in a child because many, many decades later, because I am much older than I look, at least you have to say that, is that I still feel the effects of how that made me feel, and that when I came to this country legally, because my dad moved to the United States, did all the legalities, so I was brought up to be a rule follower and to respect school, to respect teachers. And even though I had this difficulty with the British education system, the standardized testing that is very similar to Pearson, which is a British company, when I came to elementary school here in the United States, I was an A student. I became an A student because my teachers were the most amazing teachers. And I learned to embrace the love of learning in elementary school. I was inspired, and I was so happy in my new adopted country of the United States. And I just want to know, because we heard all these testimonies earlier, very heartfelt testimonies, and one of the things that keep disturbing me when I hear that there are teachers that feel silenced, there are superintendents that feel silenced, there are probably lawmakers that feel like they're silenced. Hopefully not you, of course, but you know, we have so many people who feel silenced, and meanwhile we live in the greatest country in the world. We live in a democracy. And this democracy, the last I checked, we have the freedom of speech. And lately, we are always silenced. And I guess I want to know from all of you, how are we going to stop subjecting our children to what I felt many years ago. And since then, I've actually become a successful business person. I've become very involved with my community, with my school, and all these great things have happened to me because I was part of this great educational system in this country. So I don't want my child or any child in this country to go through what I went through, because this is what is happening right now, and we have to stop it.
To answer your question, if I can, it's by doing exactly what you're doing right now. And it's by getting out there. I mean, you've heard it tonight from all over. People starting websites, people sitting there communicating with other people, people turning around and demanding that other people look at what they're doing with our educational system, right? Trying to, you're becoming teachers yourself. So those of you who say that you're not educators, you're just parents, that's far from the truth. Because what we're depending on you to do, again, we're holding this forum, all right, to give you a voice, all right? And a fine example, you weren't going to speak tonight, and I'm happy you did, all right? But to go out in your community, get other people involved, get other people talking, because I don't know if I stole this from Joe Rella or we just commonly put it together. One voice in a crowd can be drowned out. Many voices in a crowd saying the same thing at the same time can't be ignored. And that's what you're doing. So just keep it up.
So how can we break the silence of those who feel oppressed? Because there's so many who tell you things off the record. And how can we get all their voices united when they are saying it behind the Iron Curtain? I mean, this is a democracy, but it feels like people are not speaking up because they're afraid, whether it's for their jobs, whether they feel that they'll be ostracized.
Well, you know, you are giving them a voice. Last night I was at a school board meeting for the Sachem School Board. And Sachem, who was kind of leery on coming forward, passed a resolution last night against high-stake testing. Middle Country School District passed a resolution against high-stakes, testing. I think Huntington passed the same resolution. So, you know what? People are starting to listen to the parents. They're starting to listen to the teachers. NYSED has just come out, and they're going to be holding forums throughout the state. That was just last week, I believe it was. So you have people coming out. The genie's out of the bottle, okay? You can't put the genie back in the bottle, all right? People are demanding that the people that have the responsibility to put the brakes on this, put the brakes on. So all I can say to you is we started this with the bill that I put in. I think we started this in June, okay? And it's just getting louder and louder and louder. So just keep what you're doing, right? I mean, people are joining on to this. People are becoming aware of it. The papers weren't really printing this stuff. So it was all the mothers out there. It was all the parents out there. It was the teachers out there that were getting the word out. But the press is starting to pick it up now. Hopefully, and we're starting to actually get, I mean, they were portraying the parents as lunatics, as radicals, and all this other stuff. It's starting to flip over a little bit, okay, where the press is looking and saying, you know what, maybe we better take another look at this and see what's going on. So all I can say is the movement keeps growing, and it's growing throughout the entire state. So that's the best way that I can answer this question, okay, is to say that I think we're getting to the point, and it's built up to such a crescendo that they have no choice but to deal with this issue. All right, so I hope I answered your question. That's the best I can do for you right now.
I hope so. I really hope that the people who have been staying silent, because they just need to speak up and not hide behind bureaucracy or or fear of losing their job?
The one thing I've never been accused of is being shy.
That'll change as more people come out, and it's something that will build over time, and that's why we're here, that's why you're here. So we're moving in that direction.
Thank you.
And our final speaker, Tim Taylor.
Thank you, gentlemen. I want to thank you for having this forum tonight. And initially, I came down just as an observer. And after hearing passionate speaker after passionate speaker speaking about what part of Common Core they felt to be detrimental, I said, no one's brought up the data collection end of this. And then naturally, I went in to sign up to speak, and I come back, and a lady was just speaking on the data collection. But nevertheless, I was reading a Newsday today where the head of Germany, the woman who runs Germany, was complaining today that our government was tapping her cell phone. They were listening to her cell phone calls, which shouldn't come to any surprise for any of us, being after we saw the report from Homeland Security that the current administration listens to our cell phone calls whenever they feel it's appropriate. But that being said, what I'm going to talk about is child's play. That was child's play compared to the data collection involved with Common Core standards from my point of view. Now, I'm going to just read a few things I read off the internet, and then I'll elaborate a little bit. But Common Core proponents insist that Common Core has nothing to do with data mining, but the federal government always bundles the Common Core, common standards, and the data systems, always. And that's step number one, seeing the federal patterns and federal pushes for what they are. EDFACS initiative. The EDFACS is a U.S. Department of Education initiative to put the performance data at the center of policy, management, and budget decisions for all K-12 educational programs. EDFACS centralizes performance data supplied by K-12 state education agencies, SEAs, with other data assets such as financial grant information within the department to enable better analysis and use in policy development, planning, blah, blah, blah. And they place the use of robust, timely performance data at the core of the decision and policy making in education. It reduces state and district data burden and streamlining data practices, improves state data capabilities by providing resources, blah, blah, blah. So what difference does it make? I hear people say that since they have nothing to hide, they're unconcerned about who's tracking their children or their families without consent. I say our founding fathers didn't write the Constitution without inspiration. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. How easy will it be for those with access to the national databases to label a person as behaviorally unstable and therefore unworthy of passing a background check for a job or for a gun purchase for that matter? How easy will it be for those with access to databases to search and seize anything at all they deem inappropriate, that they deem threatening, that they deem theirs? Here's a few things to think about. Diseases, languages and dialects spoken, number of attempts at a given assignment, delinquent status, referral date, non-school activity involvement, meal type, screen name, maternal last name, voting status, marital status, even cause of death. And proponents point out that this is not mandatory federal data collection. That's true, not yet, but it's a federally partnered data model, and many states are following it. The Department of Ed created grants for Common Core testing and then mandated that those testing groups synchronize their tests, report fully and often to the U.S. Department of Education, share student-level data, and produce all student-level data in a manner consistent with an industry-recognized open license interoperability standard that is approved by the department. So federally funded Common Core tests require common data and interoperability standards. So, but do you think this agreement information does not apply to you because your state dropped its SBAC or PARCC membership, as some states have? Think again. This is an incestuous, horrific pool of private and public organizations. That's how they get by FERPA and HIPAA, all of which are voluntarily agreeing to Common Core-based technological interoperability and data collection standards. So virtually everyone's doing the data the same way, whether they're privately or publicly funded, and this should freak out anybody. It really should. We, the people, individuals, are losing personal power to these public-private partnerships that can be unelected and that are not subject to transparency laws of elected officials. Now, I saw an ad on TV the other day, and you wonder, what are they going to do with that data after it's collected? Who's going to be buying that data? Say you got an inoculation when you were a kid, and that inoculation proved to be a cancer-causing or some other health-related aspect to it, and now you're going to look for life insurance. Well, the insurance company's going to have access to this data, I'd imagine. And what do? Boom, boom, boom. Johnny Student over here had that inoculation. You know what? There's potential for him to have XYZ disease. His rates are going up. Well, that might just be one part of it. The lady who just left told me when I first got involved with it, she said, follow the money. Now, I saw a TV ad the other day for ExxonMobil advertising for Common Core standards. I would say, why would a company whose sole way of earning income is to increase sales of their fossil fuels have anything to do with education? And follow the money. What does Common Core standards do? It dummies down your science. It totally gets rid of social studies. And obviously, they don't want a kid coming out and coming up with an alternative method to get rid of their fossil fuels. So they're probably all for. This is my point of view. I'm saying this is something to think about down the road. You know, I mean, where's this data going to be going? And FERPA and HIPAA rights cannot be changed by the federal government, but they have used these private public corporations to essentially bypass all those rights that you have. So here's something, a new set of standards, rigorous high-quality learning standards developed and led by a group of governors and state education chiefs are under attack as a federal takeover of schools, and your role in sorting out truth from nonsense is really important. They make outlandish claims. They say that Common Core calls for federal collection of student data. For the record, we are not allowed to, and we won't. And let's not even get into the really wacky stuff, mind control, robots, and biometric brain mapping. This work is interesting, but frankly, not that interesting. Despite what State School Board and the Federal Department of Education claim, corporations do know that Common Core and student data mining are interdependent. There's a CEO of eScholar right here, spoke at the recent White House event called Datapalooza. And his speech can be looked up online at about minute 9:15. His exact statement was that Common Core is the glue that actually ties everything together for student data collection. President Obama himself has called his educational and data-related reforms so huge that they are cradle to career affecting reforms. And when I asked my school board the reps how to opt out of having children tracked by state longitudinal database system, the answer was no. There was no way to opt out. They said all children registered in any state school system, charters, online schools, homeschool, state hybrid programs, are tracked by SLDS. And there's a letter on the web that you can actually look up. So, besides all the detrimental things that we've heard from the passionate speakers tonight, there's a huge amount of data that's being collected. And what they're going to do with it is anybody's idea. But it's something that needs to be discussed and thought about. And as the father of 6 kids, I've been blessed with a kindergarten, a 5th grader, 7th grader, 9th grader, 11th grader, and I have one in her first year in Albany right now. I don't want my kids' data being all over the place. What about when my girl's ready to, look for a job? There's a database right there we just bought from National SED, and you know what? This kid is good, this kid is bad, whatever they have that data. So that's something that I would like you gentlemen to speak to the powers that be and say, hey, we don't want our kids' data being sold to anybody. That's just flat out wrong, and that needs to be squashed. And I think if the parents were aware of what's going to happen with that data, this place should have been packed tonight. And Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening to us, and hopefully we can get some of these changed, and have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you. And there is actually some bills that have been introduced about the data issue. I know my colleague, Senator Martins, has a bill he introduced, so hopefully that's something we'll take up as soon as we get back into session. But I want to thank everybody here who's still here for their patience, and especially the last few speakers for their patience. You know, by the nature of how we were trying to do this, and I think we had two very successful forums in Suffolk 2 weeks ago and tonight in Nassau, but we wanted to give everybody a chance to speak. We didn't want to cut anybody off, and the result of that is, you know, we go a little longer and it involves some waiting, but I can't thank you all enough that spoke, for your patience, and everybody for being here. And now after two successful forums down here, we're starting to travel around a little bit in the coming weeks. Myself and Assemblyman Graff have some forums that we'll be doing in Staten Island and up in Dutchess County, and then we have probably about 7 or 8 more lined up. We're going to Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, and we hope that anybody who's watching online will join us at those forums, and we'll continue to hear from parents, educators, everybody who wants to be heard throughout New York State on this very, very important issue. And I think there's no question we're gaining a lot of traction on this. You saw it this past week, you know, even when the Board of Regents met this week, they really got to the point on their agenda they couldn't ignore it, and they started discussing it. And I hope we're getting traction that way and legislatively. But thank you all for coming. You have anything to say to close out?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.